Oh, let me turn this down. I'm looking at Selma. I love this
Mm.
movie. I
Oh,
love, love, love. I love this movie. I really do. But it's hard to, and it's hard for me to watch though. Ah, oh boy, it's hard. Okay, we are up in 2-1. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let us talk about ICE. They are out of Minneapolis, but they're in every place else, all across the country. They're opening up 150 centers. They have more than doubled in size since the new administration. And they have more than $70 billion. They can do whatever it is that they want. They are so well funded. So, what are they going to do? Steve Bannon has already called for them to be at the polls. So, what will that mean? Will they literally be at the polls, or will they be stationed along the way to the polls, creating choke points? What will they do? And what are they going to do in 150 areas across the country? They will be, according to Wired magazine and other press reports, they will be stationed at or near elementary schools, preschools, um, churches. What is that about, everybody? I mean, think about that. Other sensitive locations, they said, near elementary schools, medical offices, places of worship. What is the game plan? Now, they had to leave Minneapolis because there was going to be a drawdown, of course, with all of the activity, the killing of Renee Good and then the killing of Alex Pretty. The city and really the country just, it's been on fire. I'm not so sure that the conflagration has been doused by the drawdown in Minneapolis. Think about it, everybody. There are 600 police officers in Minneapolis. There were 3,000 ICE agents. So ICE agents outnumbered the police in Minneapolis by a factor of 5-1, and the drawdown took it down to 4-1. But Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, the Attorney General Keith Ellison, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Senator Klobuchar, and so many others. And more than that, the people said, absolutely not. That's not enough. We want you out of here. And because of the people flexing their power, exercising their power, ICE had to leave. Okay. But Border Czar Tom Homan, it was so important that he had to go there. He said, well, okay, we are going to have a drawdown. We are out. We're ending this operation. Is it Metro Surge? Yeah, we're going to end that. Parenthetically, in Minneapolis, we're going to see it some of every place else. So let's talk about that. What is all of that going to mean? What is it going to mean for ICE to be everywhere? There are more than 22,000 agents, and their numbers are growing. They have the money to grow it, and they are offering huge salaries in a depressed economy. And when I
mm,
say it's depressed, I'm no economist, but I do know this: people, they have jobs that don't pay them enough, and so when you have a six-figure job that gives you a quota and says "have at it," well, that's what's happening. So let's talk about this. Of course, with Jane Ruby, League of Women Voters of Chicago. Attorney Darrell Jones, he is in the airport chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Dr. Joseph Kyle's Rainbow Push in Memphis. But let me start with you, Attorney Darrell Jones. Um, let me start with you. It's going to be interesting to get your perspective too, Dr. Kyles, because you are in Memphis. You are in one of these cities that will be targeted. And Jane Ruby is in Chicago. We've been in a city that's been targeted. ICE, well, they're still here. So, Attorney Darrell Jones, what do you see? What say you?
Well, Santita, thanks again for having me on with this just tremendous panel of guests. When we look at what's going on with ICE in this situation, and we understand that they have at least 150 leases that we know of, and they cover every state in the union. And I say that we know of because we know that the Department of Homeland Security has asked that the General Services Administration, GSA, that does the procurements for leases of buildings and stuff like that, that they ask that they start secreting the information so it would not be accessible, easily accessible to the public. So we say we know of 150 leases in every state in the union, but we don't know the exact number because some of that is probably hidden. It's consistent, it's eerily consistent with what we heard coming from Steve Bannon when he's talking about interfering in this election to have ICE agents at polling places. I say it's eerily consistent because when we have seen this emergence, this surge of ICE agents across the country, going from 10,000 agents now up to over 22,000 agents and still counting. We know that they're now going into all the states. Uh, Now that we know they have locations in every state, the question will be, will they be around polling places? Because it seems as though that they're being positioned with all of this to be able to access polling places around the country. That's how this feels. That's how this looks to me, just coming out the gate. Then when we hear the places that are looking to do some of these leases are elementary schools, uh, churches, places where polling places occur. So, it again is consistent with what Bannon had laid out with regards to trying to suppress the vote by having ICE agents at many of these locations. So all of that is extremely consistent, and that's what I believe we're seeing play out here is the promise of what Steve Bannon has said. And when you start layering that with the actions that the administration has taken to suppress voting rights, right? Whether it's the illegal, unconstitutional executive order that the president tried to put out about telling people they had to vote in person, that they couldn't use mail in ballots, or any of the other tactics that have been laid out, it's all eerily consistent with the move to suppress voters and their access and the ability to be able to use their franchise and their rights to vote. That's precisely what this looks like. And I tell you, for our foreign speaking, our migrant brothers and sisters who are now citizens or they have children that are voting and able to vote, or loved ones that are able to vote, and they're all living together, that's going to be one of those things that's going to intimidate them. That's going to have a fear factor. Will ICE follow them back to their home? Are they endangering their families by doing this? So when I hear what's happening and I'm reading what's happening with regards to the expansion of ICE, the timing is very suspect because we know March 3rd begins all of these primaries across the country. The timing is incredibly suspect, Santita, and I suspect that it's too consistent with the playbook of what we've seen occurring from Steve Bannon and from those that are trying to suppress folks, particularly brown and black voters, from being able to access their right to vote.
I'd even put progressive whites in it, just given the killing
Hmm.
uh, of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, because you can see that progressives are in the crosshairs. But let me ask you this: what do you think? I've had Greg Palast. I had Greg Palast on, the New York Times best-selling author, the documentary "The Best Democracy Money Can Buy." And his latest, of course, is Vigilantes Inc., America's new vote suppression hitman. And
Hmm.
this is the playbook.
Hmm.
He said, I don't see a cancellation of the primaries, but I do see a drawdown, a
Hmm.
slowdown, which is
Hmm.
what he said. That's what we're watching, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's very
Because canceling it would just be too broad. It would be too big. But if you have choke points and checkpoints and what do you say, Daryl
yeah, and that
Jones?
no, I think that's very consistent because one of the things that we know is that what the minority party, because it really is a minority of the people that are in this country that are the conservative party, what they know is that in order to slow down the majority of people that are here, that are in the majority party, you have to take steps to slow them down, to intimidate them, to make them fearful, to make it difficult, to complicate things, to confuse things, all of these steps. So I think that, with what Greg was laying out, that he's really consistent, that, we are going to see, and I fully suspect that we're going to see ICE choke points that are at some of these polling places, not necessarily directly at the polling place, although I don't remove that as a
Yeah.
possibility, but I mean the roads to be able to get to the polling place. If they have a checkpoint, right, where they're stopping cars, that you have to, go through and show identification and all this other stuff before you can proceed. If you have that type of checkpoint that's in place, a choke place, that's in place, that's going to, number one, frustrate a lot of people that are waiting to try to go through.
Mm.
Number two, intimidate a lot of the people questioning, am I okay? What's going on here? Maybe I shouldn't do this. I can see some seniors saying, I don't want to go through all of this. Yeah, no, that's too much for me. It's creating a dangerous situation, and I don't want to put myself in the way of danger. I can certainly see some of our immigrant brothers and sisters that are lawfully able to vote saying, I don't know what's going on here, and I'm not going to mess with it. We already know that the Supreme Court has already green-lighted, saying that ICE can actually detain folks and hold them just based on whether or not they have an accent, whether or not they look Latino, whether or not they look like they're coming from doing some type of labor that the officer associates with perhaps being of Spanish origin or Latino origin. So you have all that going on. If you put a choke point on top of that, or a checkpoint on top of that, where they can then pull them out and start, holding them and questioning them and all this other stuff, it's going to have the impact of trying to intimidate and intimidating some voters. One of the great things and one of the great responses to all this is coming from organizations across this country as they come together on March the 28th for the No Kings 3. And the response being, we'll get in the streets, we will get out there and push and be certain that the fear they're trying to instill in people is met by a courageousness that's saying, we will rise to this opportunity. We will not let you stop us. We will not let you impair this election in any way. So Santita, I think that Greg Palast is 100% on point when he says that, there's going to be interference. They're going to try to slow it down. They're going to try to turn some voters away. And we know from history that if you have just 3% of the voters that are discouraged, that can sway an election and can turn an election.
Well, what say you, Dr. Joseph Kiles? Jane, he is in Memphis. It's these cities that have been targeted. And it's very interesting to see. Daryl, of course, is on the road, and you all are working together on voter protection, Jane.
Mhm.
But Joseph, you're in Memphis,
Right.
and we're already in the election season. You see what happened in Texas. We saw
Mhm.
that 31-point swing with someone who was in a red district that is now, at least because of his message. I'm not going to say it's because of the party. I will say it's because of the message. People are following. They're following processes. They're following programs. They're not following parties now. And I
Right.
think we need to be very, very clear on that, Joseph, because you're also
Mhm.
dealing with young people. Young
Absolutely.
people are down the street. They want change.
They
They
want
want
change.
results.
They do, Santita. And again, I want to thank you for always providing our community across the globe with this valuable information. Information is power. I was talking with one of our state representatives at the beginning of the Tennessee General Assembly, and they were just notified. The state representatives and the state senators were just recently notified that the state of Tennessee turned over the voter rolls to the federal government. And I just recently penned an article in the Commercial Appeal talking about protecting the right to vote. And so I often remember what Reverend Kyles would say, Santita, one of the first rules of engagement of war is you take over communications. So it's
Mhm.
very extremely valuable, the work that you're doing and that our other panel guests are doing, to make sure that we inform the community so they know what's at stake. The SAVE Act is now at the point where it is decimating those individuals who have legally registered and been voters and participating for all of their lives. So in the article, and what I would compel and ask other organizations around the country to do, what we did is I shared a direct link to our state secretary, Trey Hargrett's office, where they could verify their voter registration. And then I gave them a nonpartisan fact sheet on the SAVE Act and what
Now,
it
why
means.
did you do that?
Well, the SAVE Act is very interesting because it requires a birth certificate or a passport if you've been purged for you to verify and get back on the voter rolls. Most people, out of 300 and some plus million that we have, and whatever that percentage is for voting, don't know where their birth certificate is. And then an even larger percentage of our residents and our citizens in the United States don't travel abroad, so they don't have a passport. So essentially what you have, by requiring those two documents, you have effectively limited those individuals who've been purged from the rolls illegally, and they won't have time if they wait to the last minute.
So what do you expect to see? Or do you expect to see anything in Memphis?
Well, what we've been doing, and I also reached out to the Divine Nine. We are working on all the fraternities and sororities, getting out and registering our students, those individuals that are in high school that have turned the age of 18 by the time of the primary. And we're also expanding our push on college campuses throughout Tennessee. And so we're trying to be as proactive as we can. And I'm thankful for all the fraternities and sororities who have pitched in and signed on to this, and also watching what's going on in Chicago with the Voter Registration Act named in honor of your father, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I think that that is tremendous to remove the barriers in high school. Whenever Santita, Reverend Jackson and I would travel to cities, he always wanted to stop and talk to the high school students. And he talked to them about how important it is to get engaged and to be participatory in their own government. And so we're excited and we're glad to see that that legislation is moving forward. And we're pushing and making sure that individuals in Tennessee have the same opportunity to register and vote without being denied.
Jane Ruby, what do you make of this? I mean, it's like Dr. Kyles, Attorney Jones, Jane Ruby. It's like you celebrate this victory. People power pushed ICE out of Minneapolis. And make no mistake, that is what's happened. But now you see, but you have to read the fine print because they are deploying all over the country while they are hiring. They have doubled in size since the beginning of this administration in a year. And they are on a hiring spree, and they're paying a great wage. Yes. So a lot of people, because it's interesting when you get close up. So when you get close enough to many of these agents, many of them are people of color. Not mostly, but many.
They are. So
let us be clear. There's a lot going on here, and I just sent everyone a text about this gentleman. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Seamus, oh boy. Well, I know the Seamus part, but Seamus Culleton, his wife is Tiffany Smith. He is an Irish national who is living here. He's been here for nearly 2 decades. He's married to an American. And he's lived in the Boston area since he overstayed his visa. And he has been in detention for 5 months. He calls it a concentration camp, and he is afraid for his life. Oh, yeah. He owns a small plastering business, and he was at Home Depot to return some items when he was picked up by ICE. He said, they said wrong place, wrong time, according to his immigration lawyer. And he's afraid for his life. So let's be very clear. Yes, are people of color being targeted? What did Sarah Palin say? You betcha. But there's a lot going on here, because it's like you made the point, Dr. Kyles. We've all been told that in a revolution, what has been seized is the communication system, and that has already happened. Mm-hmm. We're on a system that has been seized. Even social media is not free.
That's right.
You can't say whatever, you can't write and say what you want to say on Facebook or
No, I can.
X. That's why I'm on Upscrolled, everybody. Santita Jackson. Look me up on Upscrolled. Upscrolled. That is the new. I don't know if you know about that, Dr. Kyles.
I
And
didn't.
of
I'll
course
look you up
Jane
though.
does, because Jane is generation what, A? Just I don't know. I don't know.
I wish I was that cool.
What do you make of this? I mean, because it's like you can't not. I still celebrate the victory in Minneapolis, but I think it reminds us that we have to be vigilant, Jane, because they're opening up all over the place, near schools, near medical facilities, near churches. Jane, what do you say? I mean, because now you all are doing a voter protection.
Mm-hmm.
You have an initiative, and you're partnering with people all over the country. Jane Ruby.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
now I can't hear you, Jane.
oh no.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
that
There we
better?
go. No, you're still muted. Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Oh my
I can hear. I
goodness.
can hear you fine.
I can't hear Joseph either. Oh my
Oh, you can't
goodness.
hear me? Okay.
Nope. Well, you know what? We're gonna have to do it this way. But the audience can hear you. So
Okay. All
that's
right.
all right. So we're gonna keep this going. And why don't you speak to what it is that you are seeing? And I'll follow you as best I can.
Yeah. There's so much that doesn't make any sense. There's so much that's coming out at us from all different directions, but the best way that and sort of how I feel is with all of our successes and our wins in the resistance and fighting back and standing up for what's right and what's just, the administration, the bad actors in these scenarios are kind of up against, they're in a corner. And when you corner, a dangerous animal, they get much more aggressive.
Mm.
And I really feel like our win in Minneapolis has made them, obviously it was a big loss for them. And what they're doing instead is, lashing out in full force, and not just for sort of receding, but doubling down on the behavior. And that's really where we're sort of seeing these aggressive threats towards other cities, actions in going back into different communities in Chicago and Memphis and other places around the country. Is it's definitely like you're backed into a corner, and they're just trying whatever they can to have stick. And that's really where, Santita, you're right, the vigilance. And it's not you do an action as part of the resistance and then you're done and you go home. This is an everyday process, 24/7 active and informed citizen participation in order to ensure that we're not going backwards the way things were before, because I don't think that things were working very well before.
Let me ask you this.
Whatever comes next is going to be better, is going to be more just, is going to be more equal for all those involved. There was a lot of comfortability and complacency in the way things were before, and this has really sort of brought to light that it's like we can't be comfortable, we can't be complacent, we have to vote in every election, we have to be vigilant, we have to take care of each other. You have to know who your neighbors are. This is a block by block resistance, and that's the way we're going to get through this.
What about working with the incarcerated? Because there's a difference between jail and prison.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that that I grew to understand. If you're in jail, you might not have been convicted. You might not be able to make bail, right?
That's right.
And many people who are in jail can vote.
Mm-hmm.
They can be registered to vote.
That's
I mean,
right.
if ever there was a time for people to get involved, all you have to do is look at what happened in Minneapolis in sub-zero weather. I think there's something going on with Americans right now. Like you're seeing something all over the world. We see these Olympic athletes from all over the world who are making political statements. Now, mind you, they have Carlos and Smith from 1968 in their rearview mirror. They know that that they can
Mhm.
pay a price, particularly in this hyper commercialized age.
Right.
And yet they're willing to do that. Because it's the zeitgeist, it's the spirit of the times. There's something in the air that, I think Jane's generation in particular, Joseph, and I
Mhm.
call him Joseph because Joseph and I have known each other
That's fine.
decades. Just let's leave it right there. You stay with his family when I was a child, and my mother let us stay nowhere. But your Aunt Gwen, we
Yes.
stayed in her house because
Yes.
my mother loved her and she loved my mother and she trusted her. And she would take on my brother Yusuf, who was a toddler. First time we went down there, Yusuf was like 3.
Yeah.
So, yes, and stayed at the house. So, God bless her. No, he wasn't yet 3.
He wasn't.
He was 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's who we've been.
Those are
But
precious memories.
help us to understand, you know, we don't want to forget anyone or leave anyone behind
Mhm.
in this moment, because people are anxious, not just for change. They want things to be right.
Well, there's
They-
been such a price paid for the right to vote. And I often think you just brought my memory back to Monumental Baptist Church and how for over 58, 59 years, they were so supportive of Rainbow Push and Reverend Kyles. And I also think about uh, there were people in the church, whether it was our deacons or our trustees or our mother's board, who grew up right close and out of, 1865. It was someone one generation over. And I'm thinking about Deacon Benson and Mother Benson. Deacon Benson was one of the first African American deputy sheriffs in Memphis, and Mrs. Benson was a phenomenal entrepreneur. And when I think about them and the thousands of others like that across the country who paid a significant price to make sure that we had the right to vote, everything now is under assault. And so there are 4 or 5 generations um, that have worked to build us up into this point. And now I agree with you. Something different is changing. The fact that the pain is now has been spread out, and there are more people feeling the pain, feeling the threats, and they are responding in a beautiful way to make sure that we have an opportunity to protect the right to vote. And I'll say this lastly before we hear from Jane. Just recently, 2 days ago in Memphis, uh, there was some internal friction in our political structure where our county commissioners sought to limit the terms of 5 of our school board members. They wanted to take away the voters and the voters' decision and who they elected. But in the wisdom of the judge, they ruled in the favor of those individuals and did not cut their terms short. And that's what we have to look at all over the land, where these judges are now standing up and saying, this is wrong. Typically, we all know they say the term, you can indict a ham sandwich. Well, those 4 or 5 members of Congress that individuals were trying to indict, that grand jury said no. And so people are standing up. And that's what I think is very important as we move out.
Jane, Dr. Kyle's just the League of Women Voters of Chicago. Well, we've got our primaries coming up in about a month.
Right.
We've just seen Texas. We're in the season. It's not March. It's right now. That's why,
Right.
as I ask you this question, Jane, everyone, please make sure you are still on the voter rolls. There are only about 20 states or so that have same day on-site voter registration. We're fortunate enough in Illinois to have that, something that we had to fight for very hard. But other people are not so fortunate. So need you to do a couple of things. Number one, go to vote.org, vote411.org, and find out if you are on the voter rolls. Just find out. You can call 1-866 our vote and find out if you are on the voter rolls. You're going to hear me repeat those numbers over and over again, and go to that website. Once you enter your information, and it's really basic, I think it's because I've done it. because you enter your zip code, you can pull up your information and you can find out if you are still on the voter rolls. Also, you can call 1-866-OUR-VOTE and find out if you're on the voter rolls. In addition to that, if you are in the polls and you have a problem, you also call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and you do not leave the polls until your vote has been cast
Right.
and your issue has been resolved. And fight not to use a provisional ballot. 50% of them are thrown away.
Right.
Just about. So
Mhm.
please don't do that. Let me ask you, Jane, about these candidates, because you're working with candidates, Dr. Kiles, and I want to get some of them on this show because there are different issues that we're facing in different parts of the country, but there is a through line. Affordability is a through line. The right to vote, access to the vote is a through line. Unease about ICE. Well, no, the fact is the majority of Americans, like more than 60%, don't want them in their cities. And ICE agents are not even telling their neighbors that they're ICE.
That's right.
Jonathan Ross, who we saw kill Renee Good, his neighbors thought he was a botanist. He did. Yeah. Put your eyebrows down, Joseph. He did not even tell he did not tell his neighbors the truth.
Right.
He told them, I'm a botanist. Okay, so you do flowers. You just put them on top of people after you've shot them. So help me with that piece. Do you find with the debate that you just hosted, are candidates responsive to what is really going on out here? Or are they, and I'm going to pose that same question to you, Dr. Kiles.
Okay.
I mean, because some of the corporate candidates, if you will, they give you these pat answers and responses. I don't think people want that right now because we don't have average problems. People now are losing their jobs.
That's right.
We've seen hundreds of thousands of Black women lose their jobs. Most people are in, if you're not single, if you're single, that means you have no income. If you're married, that means most people need both incomes to make it. I mean, and that's just Black people. I mean, because white men gained employment over everybody, but white women gained in employment, Hispanic women, Black women took the big hit. And eventually other people are going to take the hit because we can see that with AI. But do you see, are the candidates speaking the people's language? I guess that's just the best way I could put it, Joseph. I mean, are they speaking to the needs? You remember that gentleman who ran for mayor in New York City some years back, more than 10 years ago? He said, and he was from the Rent is 2 DAMN High Party. Remember that? And he would make everybody crack up in the debates. But people they said, well, but he is telling the truth. Okay. And so what did you hear at the debate? And what are you hearing from candidates, not just in Chicago, but just everywhere? Jane.
Yeah, I think we have a massive problem with candidates across the board in that they're beholden to special interests, money, super PACs, PAC money, that, they are so far removed from being, of the people in the same way, where, a congressional campaign shouldn't cost $20 million. Like, think of what $20 million could go towards instead of, mail that gets thrown away and digital ads and overpriced, election or your campaign committees and such. The cost and the barriers to participation in our election system are so extreme right now. And a lot of that is because of Citizens United, but it also has to do with, the in the same way that, we have all of these, military industrial complex, all of these systems, we do have a political industrial complex that really thrives on how elite and expensive campaigns and elections should be, and who's the slickest, who's able to fundraise millions of dollars. And that creates a lot of inequity, not just in candidate and incumbent relations to the voters, but in also the diversity of who can run for office and barriers to participation. And what we're seeing is, the influence of dark money and special interests. And I mean, it's wild, some of the techniques in which PACs are able to funnel money in. Like, there's this, way that you can have subliminal symbols in your website, then the PACs know what they can take from your website and use in messaging. Like, this whole system is wild how dark and out of touch it really is. But that's the system we have. And so the kinds of candidates you get are going to be these mega fundraisers, these really slick people. But what you're seeing in a lot of other places, and I think New York City is an amazing example, for over 20 years, they've had a small donor matching program for their elections, both city and state, where candidates, if you opt into this program, you have to still raise money, but you are also limited in what you can raise. And whatever you raise beyond that then gets dispersed. You can disperse it to other candidates. It's the way of the future, but they've been doing it for 20 years, and people really like that system, and they keep upping the amount of money that people can qualify from this fund because of how successful it is. And when you look at Mayor Mamdani, he opted into that program. He was wildly successful under it, and he was able to take on multi-million-dollar special interest groups and ran a campaign of the people because he was of the people. He was, in a campaign finance situation, he was able to raise that kind of grassroots campaign. And we need to see that in more places. And once we can sort of address the funding and how much disgusting out of touch money is involved in politics, that's when we'll really sort of get the policy changes that we all want to see.
I think that is
Dr.
excellent.
Kiles,
Yes, ma'am.
because you've been working with, I mean, look, DC, Tennessee got a little hot because
Yeah.
you had 3 legislators tossed out of the legislature. I
Yes.
mean, expelled. Well,
Uh-huh.
2 expelled, and it set the country on fire.
Mhm.
And one gets a sense, as I asked Jane Ruby, when you're listening to people, I'm wondering, are you hearing candidates who are speaking the language of the people, who are speaking to the people's needs? That's something that we learned from Reverend.
That's right.
That, you got to meet the need.
Got to meet the needs. And Reverend would always say, you build government from the bottom up, not the top down. And so I'm always thinking, and I'm happy to still have both of my parents. I was talking with my mother the other day, whom you know, and she will be blessed to turn 80 this year. And she asked me, she said, something is wrong with the candidates because they have no compassion. All we hear is that they're driven for a particular interest or a particular area. Then I had a conversation with Dewana, your good friend, and Dewana told me, because she also resides in New York as well as Memphis, she got so excited about Mamdani because he drove 3 points home, talked about transportation for everyone, free transportation, that there was going to be a freeze on rent hikes. And I think the other one was that they were going to have healthcare or childcare and fresh groceries and fresh food in all the communities. And so as a nutritionist, that hit right where Dewana is in her head. But more importantly, that message kind of resonated throughout this, I think she said he campaigned from the top of Manhattan all the way down through all the other boroughs. And that took some time and some effort, but some commitment. And I think we don't hear enough of candidates like that, even though he's not in his 40s yet. The fact that he understood that and the individuals around him understood that. And then I'll bring it closer to home here in Memphis. I think Justin Pearson has a great future ahead of him. And I think that the work that he is doing, he's running for Congress now. He's one of those individuals that you mentioned that got expelled. And simply for talking about gun control from the standpoint that we're having too many killings at our schools and in our schools. And so those things are quite interesting. And one of the individuals that really resonates with me here, and it's a trustee position. Our county trustee takes in about $4.5 billion annually. And Joseph Lee is a candidate there. When you hear him and you listen to him speak, he's extremely knowledgeable. He's been in government. He is a gentleman of government. And I think we need to have more candidates like that speaking to the nature of compassion and how they're going to deliver services to the constituency.
What do you see? I mean, what do you think this election season is going to look like? I mean, not November. I mean, we've got a new No Kings March coming up March 28th. I get the sense that it's been put on a fast track because of all that has been going on. Because we have not had a moment's rest since the beginning of the year. It's been nonstop everything. Talk of war, movement toward war that Americans do not want. So much is happening in America that Americans do not want. Even Republicans don't want it, right?
That's right.
What do you, and then when you put on top of that during the election season, ICE, most Americans don't want ICE around. I mean, Americans don't do authoritarianism well.
No, they do not.
It's just, everybody's, well, except Black people and Indigenous people have and that doesn't negate anything. It's just we all have different stories. And if we could embrace each other's stories, when you weave it all together, put it in the quilt, as my father would say, it is the American story. It is slave and free.
That's right.
It is rich and poor.
The
and
lion
creating
and the
middle
lamb.
class. It's everything, right?
That's right. That's right.
So help me, what is this? What is it going to look like in America to have a law force that people do not want? When the Gallup poll says that most Americans today don't feel good about what's going on in the country, it just seems like it's almost like a bridge too far.
I agree.
Joseph?
I think that we're in a very delicate position as a country. I think that those individuals who believe in the right to bear arms outnumber the force of ICE. And I think that it could be an imperfect storm if those two factions come together. And that would be much like a civil war. And when you talk about taking arms, we've heard those that live at Pennsylvania Avenue and those who work there talk about not bringing their weapons to these protests. I think it's very important that we listen and we hear what those who come out of that gun culture, and they clearly said, you will not prevent us from carrying our weapons because we are lawful gun owners and we have carry permits. And they exclusively and explicitly said they're coming to these protests. That's a real dangerous cocktail, and we need to be very careful on how we move forward because it's a powder keg.
Jane, I just saw Ashley King, who's from down there with you, Joseph. He's a Memphian. He's from Memphis.
All right.
He said basically, he who has the gold makes the rules. Ordinarily, I think that would apply to the wealthy, but today I think if we really look at things, I mean, if we really study what happened in Minneapolis, if we study what happened in Chicago, because I've got to give big ups to Chicago because Chicago pushed back hard.
They did.
And we just did not have the Renee Good and the Alex Pretty. We did have Pastor Black, who was shot in the face in Broadview. You remember that, as he was pleading, and then the ICE agent laughed at him as he shot him with the plastic bullet, with the rubber bullet. It's like, are you serious?
Right.
Tell me what Americans what's being imposed upon us. I don't think that's going to work. It already fit. Okay, Joseph, Jane, you're pensive. I mean, and particularly because people came to America running away from that,
Mm,
right?
right.
And Black people found ourselves here fighting that. So in our own way, if we're coming at it from different directions, but we meet right here. If we could
Well,
only see,
Malcolm
right?
X used to often say, um, he read the history of how America was started. And many people would say the sun would never set on the British Army. But the Brits came over here and got into it with those 13 colonies, and they were defeated. And so individuals who say he who has the gold makes the rules really have never been in a fight before. They've never been punched in the mouth. They didn't play football. They don't know what it means to get hit and the wind knocked out of you and still get up. And so civil rights work, humanitarian work is that shows humanity, even though we are in the face of inhumane people. And I think that what I saw and what we all saw in Minneapolis was that there was a groundswell and a calling of individuals to now come forward and show their humanity, even in the face of inhumane people.
You see Ashley King, he's a riot tonight. He said, wait a minute, look at this. Melt ice. Just you guys. Ashley, occupied Memphis, Tennessee. Is Memphis occupied?
Well, I mean, we still have the force here. We've got the task force here. And I think we talked about that before, that due to the relationship with our command staff at Memphis Police Department, we've not had issues that have gotten out of control. But I would say that our police chief, C.J. Davis, and others that are in control of our uniform division, Deputy Chief Sam Hines. I know these individuals personally. And so they have taken an approach where they have managed that system well. I did see something the other day where Attorney General Pam Bondi referred to our mayor as a good guy. And I think Paul is doing a difficult job. But what we have now is we have a jail, 201 Poplar, that is full of individuals that have small infractions. And because it has log jam, you find individuals with bench warrants or some small individual things that cannot get out for weeks. And so that is because we've had this onslaught of law enforcement, state troopers, ICE, and others, along with MPD, that are continuing to take individuals into our holding capacity, and they're not releasing them fast enough. We don't even have enough judges to deal with the backlog and the cases. And so there are things that we need to work on and get better at. But individuals that are locked in 201 Poplar in the jail, and it's a small infraction where typically they would just sign something, a fine or a fee, and show up and pay it in court. Now they're being held in a facility that makes no sense.
Jane, we're coming into this. Tis the season. We are looking, Joseph. We have commercials on all day long. Just to vote. Help me to. Do you think that the needs of are the needs of Americans, are they separate? Is it rural and urban? Is it young and old? Is it rich and poor, or are we beginning to see a convergence? Because I just don't see this, the bifurcation, the trifurcation, the separation that I've seen before. Because when you looked at when you looked at people pushing back in Chicago, it was everybody. Minneapolis, it's everybody. More than 60% of Americans object to ICE. Most Americans are dissatisfied with where the country is and where it's heading.
Right.
And I think that's a crisis, but the crisis creates opportunity. So I guess as Dr. King, and Dr. King has been on, has been on your mind, Dr. Kiles. He's written a tremendous op-ed piece that's now being picked up nationally. I encourage you to read it, and you have to let us know how we can access it. Because
Absolutely.
I'm going to put it all over my social media.
Thank you so much.
But Dr. King did ask, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And it seems that chaos is coming from the top, but community is coming from the bottom. Because those marches in Minneapolis were not violent.
They were not.
They were not violent in Chicago.
No.
And the No Kings March, the first one, wasn't violent. And we know enough that if we see violence, you know that these are saboteurs. Because that's not the spirit in which Americans are functioning. But they are demanding some real change. What say you, Jane?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just sort of at another moment in our history where the comfortable class ceased to be comfortable. And, that was basically the reason we declared independence from Britain was, the comfortable people couldn't get their tea and their cloth and their stamps and all of those things, and they were just like, okay, we're going to rise up and do our own thing because this is unjust. And I think we're, at every time we have seen sort of an abrupt cataclysmic, rupture that paved the way for progressive positive change, there's been something about the comfortable class that has made their lives less comfortable, and that has caused sort of the broad community that is needed to really push for positive change. And I think that that's very much what's going on here. You are seeing, and we've talked about this before, so it's like you can't even get angry at like the wine moms in the suburbs who are like, having whistle making parties and going out on patrols. Like, you can't even be angry at them for like just waking up to like the need for change in our country, because it's just like you're so thrilled that they are like out there patrolling with their whistles and coming together in community in ways that they weren't before to, stand up for all people in this country. It's like what we're seeing is comfortable people being priced out of, housing opportunities, healthcare, education, groceries, all of these things. And they're just like, wait, the things don't need to be this way. Like with, a snap of his fingers, and Mayor Mamdani was able to, in his first month in office, do universal pre-K program across the whole city, fully funded for 2 years. Like, obviously there was a lot of moving parts to that, but it shows that it is possible to get change and not have to wait around for it. And, when the people push for the change that they want to see, it can happen a lot quicker than people are told and led to believe by those in positions of power. And so I think between sort of seeing what's possible and feeling like, the way things are working are really not working for anyone, from, upper middle class down, everyone is being affected by what's going on. The only people that are not are, sort of that upper oligarchy, very elite ruling class. But we're seeing just people who are like, hey, things aren't working. Can we do better? And that starts with taking care of each other. That starts with, making sure that the people on your block are taken care of, making sure that people feel safe going to schools. That's, I've seen so many people activated in ways that they haven't been before. And, that's one of the reasons why going into the March election, like the League were, doing this Peacekeeper program is, it's an extra added layer of everything that's already being done around election protection. But there's something about the taking care of each other and allowing people to feel safe and comfortable, even if ICE isn't going to be at your polling place. Like, you should still be able to see familiar faces, people who care about you, people who care about your voting experience on election day, as a way to ensure that people have good experiences exercising their right to vote, good experiences being a concerned citizen in our country. And it's those sorts of, activations that are really going to kind of move us forward into that sort of, I don't know what it's going to look like, but it will hopefully be better, more expansive, groovier than anything we've had before.
I like that groovy.
Joseph, what's your closing thought?
About 5 years ago, I asked your father to come to Memphis based upon how much violence we were having in our high schools. And he responded and he met with our city leaders and talked about conflict resolution as a system and what we needed to do. And I'm happy to announce, and I hope you would share with your dad, that on Tuesday, Rainbow Push Coalition Memphis submitted a curriculum to the Memphis MSCS school board and the superintendent to deal with how we de-escalate and teach individuals conflict resolution skills so that we can lower incidents of violence among students and staff, and that we can teach them soft skills as they create and go on to higher education or in the workforce. And so we're excited about that. And I'm just saying that it's a 5-year span. So we've been in these schools now for a pilot of 4 years. Now to talk about your topic in terms of where we are in America and what we need to do. We have to band together. We have to register to vote, and we have to bring new people to the polls, and we have to protect the right of those who are getting their voter registration purged, and we have to do that as a group.
In about a minute, is there anything you'd like to add, Jane, before we go?
I mean, that sounds like an incredible pilot program, and I think that there's so much that needs to happen with young people in particular to set them on the right path. Where, as was mentioned earlier, there is the Jesse Jackson Voting Rights Advancement Act that we're pushing for here in Illinois, where it encourages schools, hey, your kids are graduating, make sure they're registered to vote. It goes to what your father has said about, people should have their high school diploma in one hand and their voter card in another. And
right.
It seems like such a small thing, but it's those sorts of actions of ensuring that people feel like they can participate and have those good interactions with each other, good first-time voting experiences that is going to set them on the path to success and in participation and feeling like this country is not only for them but made by them.
Jane Ruby, League of Women Voters, Chicago, makes me so proud. Joseph, I think the future is safe. When I see young people like her, but look, when I've seen you've absorbed the lessons, all the things that you've been learning with your uncle, Reverend Billy Kyles, Samuel Billy Kyles, and Reverend Jackson, and so many people down through the years. Look, we've got work to do, everybody. We can vote our way through this. We can work our way through this, but we can't do it alone. We have to do it with each other. We have to do it together. So please, everybody, know that your vote counts. What's been playing in the background in my office has been the movie Selma. Selma. You think of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Reverend James Reeb.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Viola Liuzzo,
Oh.
a mother of 5 children who saw Bloody Sunday and said, I've got to go do something. Reverend James Reeb saw that too. They were killed. Jimmy Lee Jackson came back from the Second World War and said, I will not be denied the vote. People died for this. Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney died for this. They were killed. They were killed. As my father said, less than your best is a sin. You don't have the right to not vote. You don't have the right not to try. If you have been blocked from voting because you have a record, you can still drive people to the polls. You can still participate. And those of you who've had people that you love who've been in the system, involve them in the process, because they are citizens and they should be treated as such, even if they are not, even if they've been barred from the polls. Everybody in, nobody out. Everybody has something they can do. Dr. King said it best. Everybody can't be famous, but everybody can serve. And that is your greatness. So go to vote.org, vote411.org, 1-866 our vote. Find out if you're still registered to vote. Should you get to the polls and you find out that you have a problem, call 1-866 our vote. And do not move, do not leave until you get it resolved. There are lawyers on that line who will help you. And try to go to the polls with some friends. That's something that Reverend Jackson always pushed. Because if you have a problem, when you have backup, you feel empowered.
That's right.
So everybody, let's get to it. Let's get to work. We've got a country to save. We've got a world to save. It's a lot that we've got to do. I love everybody. God bless you. Have a great one. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless you. Love you.